What if there's a kind of spiritual bliss so incredible, so divine, that it can actually stop your spiritual growth dead in its tracks? Today we're exploring one of the most misunderstood states on the spiritual path, Bhava Samadhi. Imagine for a second, your body starts trembling, tears pour down your face uncontrollably, and your heart feels like it's melting straight into God. It looks like you've reached enlightenment, feels like pure heaven. But what if you're caught in a beautiful trap? I'm going to show you what Bhava Samadhi really is, how saints like Ramakrishna experienced it, why so many modern seekers get stuck in it, and how to tell if you're confusing emotional highs with true awakening. If you've ever broken down crying in meditation or felt completely overwhelmed by bliss, this might explain everything. Bhava means feeling, mood, emotional attitude. Samadhi means absorption, union, that deep meditative stillness. Bhava Samadhi happens when you get so completely absorbed into a specific emotional frequency that everything else in your mind just stops. Yet, here's the crucial part. The emotion stays. This differs completely from nirvikalpa or sahaj samadhi, where your ego dissolves into formless consciousness. In Bhava Samadhi, your ego remains very much present. It's just completely overwhelmed. The I still exists as the lover, the devotee, the child of God. That subject-object separation doesn't break. It actually gets stronger. You feel like you're merging with the divine while you're still very much there, experiencing it. This creates an interesting situation. Back in the 1800s, there was this incredible saint named Sri Ramakrishna who worked as a priest at the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. One day, he was singing devotional songs to the Divine Mother when he suddenly just collapsed. His body went completely rigid. Tears wouldn't stop flowing down his face. He stayed like that for hours, totally absorbed in what he called Bhava Samadhi. People walking by thought he was having an epileptic fit. His disciples knew he'd touched something divine. Bhava Samadhi is this deep trance-like state of devotional ecstasy. A wave of emotion so powerful crashes over you that it completely wipes out ordinary consciousness. You cry, you laugh, you might faint. Sometimes people even speak in tongues or lose complete control of their body. It looks like total surrender, yet something else might be happening entirely. You hear stories from Vrindavan about devotees collapsing during holy celebration, completely overwhelmed by visions of Krishna dancing in the crowd. There's this tale of a Bengali sadhu from the 1970s who lost his voice after going into bhava every single day during the 9 days of Durga Puja. He only spoke once after that, just to say, she was too close to put into words. To really understand the complexity and potential danger of Bhava Samadhi, you need to look at how ancient bhakti texts categorize emotional expressions on the spiritual path. All bhava isn't created equal. The sages carefully distinguished between 3 modes of devotional feeling: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic bhava. Each carries a different spiritual vibration and potential outcome. Sattvic bhava is considered the purest form. In this, the devotee has involuntary tears, a soft trembling of the body hairs standing up, complete stillness, spontaneous silence, or even fainting while awareness remains. These are seen as signs of deep internal transformation, the ego softening, a soul getting close to the flame of divine presence. The gopis' ecstatic weeping in the Bhagavad Purana or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spontaneous collapses are classic examples. They are effortless, unprovoked, and leave behind this residue of peace and humility. Rajasic bhava takes on more energy and becomes more outward. It involves loud chanting, wild dancing, intense physical gestures, vocal expressions of devotion. It might be sincere and temporarily uplifting, yet it can sometimes be fueled by performance or ego, a desire to feel something powerful, or to be seen as spiritually advanced. Many modern kirtans, while often beautiful, sometimes drift into this territory. The crowd energy itself becomes addictive, and the focus shifts from surrender to stimulation. Tamasic bhava is the most misunderstood and most warned against. It shows up as delusion mistaken for devotion, confusion, hallucination, aggressive fanaticism, or dissociation that masquerades as spiritual depth. Sometimes it stems from unresolved trauma or mental imbalance rather than genuine surrender. Traditional teachers have always cautioned that without proper grounding, the pursuit of bhava can turn from a sacred ascent into an egoic spiral or psychological harm. The goal in bhakti goes beyond merely feeling. The Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu, a foundational text by Rupa Goswami, outlines how bhava must ripen into prema, a divine love without conditions or cravings. True bhava leads to surrender, never spectacle. If you emerge from it more centered, loving, and humble, it is likely sattvic. If you become dependent, reactive, or dramatic, the bhava needs purification. Here's where things get dangerous. BhavaSamadhi can become addictive in ways that are subtle and seductive, where the sweetness of it, this divine intoxication that feels like honey flowing through your veins, becomes so profound that you start chasing the experience itself instead of seeking the source that gives rise to it. Much like any drug, where the high gradually becomes what you're really after, instead of the healing that you originally sought. You see this happening a lot in modern kirtan culture, where collective energy builds through rhythm and lights and creates these emotionally charged atmospheres that can be incredibly powerful. But what begins as a genuine sacred offering to the divine can slip almost imperceptibly into a loop of emotional gratification, where people become addicted to that feeling itself. Without anyone realizing, this shift is happening beneath the surface of what looks like devotion. Even Sri Ramana Maharishi, who was a true Gnani and understood the deepest levels of consciousness, warned about this very thing, when he pointed out that emotional highs, no matter how divine they feel, are still movements happening within the mind, rather than the pure awareness that lies beyond all movement. So when your tears come and your body trembles with what feels like divine presence, you might want to ask yourself this crucial question. Are you clinging to the bliss like someone grasping at clouds? Or are you actually dissolving it in the way salt disappears completely into water? BhavaSamadhi tends to show up under certain conditions. Bhakti Yoga creates perfect conditions for triggering it. Devotional paths focused on Krishna, Rama, Kali worship are famous for creating intense emotional states. If you're naturally a highly emotional person, you're more likely to experience it. Lovers, poets, mystics, people who feel everything deeply are especially vulnerable. Then there's group energy. Chanting sessions, ritual, festivals. Emotional energy spreads like wildfire. The bhava builds and builds until it becomes this collective ecstasy. It usually starts so innocently. A song touches you. A verse hits differently. You catch a glimpse of your deity's image and something just cracks open inside you. Even Ramakrishna warned against attachment to the state. He advised, go beyond it. Learn to sit with silence. In the classical understanding of bhakti, bhava isn't meant to be the final destination, but rather the beginning of something much deeper, like the first crack in an egg that eventually allows the bird to emerge into a completely different kind of existence. Saints like Rupa Goswami, who understood the subtle psychology of devotion better than almost anyone, teach that bhava, when it's sustained over time and gradually purified through practice and grace, naturally transforms into something called prema, which is divine love that exists without any expectation, without any sense of duality, without any need for the emotional peaks and valleys that characterize the earlier stages. Prema doesn't need weeping to prove its existence, doesn't require dramatic collapse to validate its depth, but simply exists in this radiant external stillness that contains more love than all the tears ever shed. Which explains why in truly mature saints, bhava becomes something completely internal, rather than the external display that catches everyone's attention. Take Anandamayima, who as a young woman would enter these incredibly long trances that seemed to transport her to other realms entirely. But as she matured spiritually, she gradually began expressing her devotion in much quieter, more subtle ways, to the point where her mere presence alone would bring tears to others, while she herself stood like a perfectly still flame that burned without any visible fuel. She used to advise people with this gentle wisdom: let the waves of experience pass through you like weather through an open sky. Because what really matters, what contains the actual treasure, is what remains when all the waves have settled and the ocean returns to its natural stillness. Something needs to be said here, especially in spiritual circle where certain paths get quietly ranked as more sophisticated than others. Bhakti gets treated like the remedial class of enlightenment, something people do when they can't handle the real stuff. Consider Miraabai, that wild saint who spent her life singing to Krishna. She never wanted to dissolve into some vast formless ocean. The idea would have horrified her. Why would she want to lose herself when she could spend eternity dancing with her beloved? For Miraabai, those tears streaming down her face during Kirtan weren't obstacles to overcome. They were the whole point. The ecstasy was the destination. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood this completely. Recognized as an incarnation of divine love itself, he taught something radical. Surrender so completely through emotion that the emotion becomes God's own expression. Your tears become God weeping. Your trembling becomes the universe shaking with love. These traditions treat duality as sacred ground. The ache of longing for the divine becomes the sweetest nectar. The gap between lover and beloved creates the very space where intimacy lives. It's like music. Without the spaces between notes, there's only noise, the reaching, the yearning, the never quite grasping completely. That creates the song. For someone whose heart beats to this rhythm, Bhava Samadhi becomes prasad, grace you can taste, touch, feel in your bones, a gift that keeps pouring itself through tears and trembling and the beautiful agony of love that never quite satisfies itself. But even within Bhakti's gorgeous framework, things can go sideways. Your ego starts collecting the tears like trophies. You begin thinking of yourself as the one who feels God deeper than everyone else. What was supposed to flow like a river turns into a stagnant pond. You end up worshipping the feeling instead of what the feeling points toward. Traditional teachers saw this coming from miles away. They built humility into the foundation of genuine spiritual experience. Real bhava leaves behind stillness, peace, an authentic sense of surrender. The kind that craves attention, seeks applause for its intensity, or creates compulsive repetition, that needs some serious questioning and probably purification. Walk into today's spiritual marketplace and you'll find bhava getting performed more than received. Social media overflows with clips of people shaking, crying, collapsing in dramatic displays. The context that would make these expressions meaningful has been stripped away completely. There's a story about some Western students asking Neem Karoli Baba about these kind of displays. Whether it actually happened or exists more as teaching tale doesn't matter much. His response was perfect. God sees the inside. That cuts right to the heart. Authentic bhava happens as private conversation between soul and divine. It doesn't need an audience. Approach bhava with relaxed alertness. Don't hunt it like some spiritual trophy, but don't run when it shows up naturally either. If it comes to visit, receive it like rain after drought. Let it wash through you completely. Let it cleanse whatever needs cleansing. Then let it go, without trying to bottle it or manufacture it again. Pay attention to what remains after the storm passes. Real peace settling in your bones? A quality of silence that nourishes rather than empties? Devotion that doesn't need drama to sustain itself? That stable ground is what all the fireworks were pointing toward. Most importantly, know your path clearly, enough to distinguish what serves your actual growth from what distracts. Walking toward Advaita, and pure awareness, Bhava becomes a visitor passing through without leaving footprints. Walking towards Krishna and divine love, Bhava might be the yellow brick road itself, leading you home to your beloved.